once again, if you don't know where that's at, just go to the admin page. It's the admin screen up there in the top right corner, and then role administration. Nick also talked about a little bit yesterday of how you guys have your roles structured out. Remember, roles are your security settings per user, right? So a user will be assigned to one of these roles, and that actually distinguishes what they can and can't do inside of Cartograph. He talked about how you guys have yours structured, considering an admin, power user, user, viewer, and a work role for multiple departments, potentially, and how those are all kind of divvied out. So what I can actually go ahead and do here is I'll just go ahead and say create, and we'll kind of just see the security settings on maybe just a test role here so you guys can see it. So in this case, I'm just going to create a new role and call it test role. The role name is obviously required. However, if you have a description, you don't have to put one, but some people like to put what they can and can't do, kind of a brief summary in there. And then you finish and save. We can take a look at another one here in a second, but if you actually go view a role, you'll be able to see every single user that's actually assigned to it, so you can see who actually belongs into that role. And if you want to see what kind of properties they have, you go up to the right and it says security settings. We'll go ahead and open that up. Inside the security settings, it's going to look pretty similar to just the regular OMS page by the tabs that we actually have at the top for requests, work, assets, resources, and the admin. And the way it works is each section has their own distinct properties. So we start in request. The checkbox over here on the left you will see throughout the whole thing, and it's going to be pretty similar no matter where we're at in the security settings here. But if you have this check marked, that means that they can at least view it. They have access to the request tab and they can see it. If you take it away, that means they won't be able to even get to the request tab. It means they no longer have access to it. And then on the right, at the very top, this is screen assignments. These are the layouts that the role has assigned to them. So you guys have multiple layouts per role, right? Each role gets a specific layout. So for requests, it can tell you what your list view layout's going to be and what your detail layout's going to be. And then also for your child records, what you can actually see for them as well. So as we take a look in one of the ones that you guys already have created, you may see some differences here because you guys may have some custom layouts that are actually taking place up top. The next section is security assignments. You do have create, update, and delete permissions that you guys can pick and choose from in order to give your role certain access. At the very top, these are kind of universal check marks, right? So if you don't want to go through and select all 8, you can turn all 8 off and on if you want to, and so on through the rest as well. Or you can kind of pick and choose some things they can create, some things they can't, some things they can update, some things they can't, right? You can kind of choose those as you'd like. One of the big things is reports is also a permission per item, right? So per record set. Being able to create, update, and delete reports is individual based. So requests has their own settings, tasks has their own settings, work orders, every single individual asset is all on an individual basis as far as if you can create, update, and delete reports. So if you guys are out there and trying to create a report on, let's say, signs, and you can't, but you can create a report on pavement, then most likely your role security is just not allowing you to. And then command permissions down below. All of them are selected to allow by default. However, you can always turn them to deny. So if you want them to be a strict viewer role, right, they can just go ahead and view everything, but they can't actually export anything out of the system. They can't really have much customization. They're just in there to look at some data. You can always turn these all on to deny. That way they can't run any reports. They can't get the data out of the system by exporting it. All they can do is really just look at it inside Cartograph, and that's the extent that they'll have for permissions. Another thing would be attachments is kind of big, especially with you guys. So if for some reason you'll never be able to add an attachment to any of you guys' records, this is most likely the reason why. And then also something to note is you can see these carets that kind of go on. So inside requests, anything that now has 2 carets is technically a child record set. So attachments and comments and requester logs, those are child record sets within requests themselves. And you have to have permissions to actually create those child record sets or update or delete them as well. Move on to the work. It's going to be a lot of the same from here on out as far as the actual security permissions, but now you can actually see how it's kind of laid out. So now you have a section for tasks and a section for work orders. They are 2 different things, right? So they have 2 different properties there. Other than that, you may just see some more additions added into the security assignments section. So you may see more child record sets, and so you'll have more create, update, and delete permissions there. You'll also see different command permissions based on which record set you're on. So you can see it allow and deny has a lot more options here for tasks, right? If you can actually convert a non-asset to an asset. So obviously there's some caveats when doing that, as you saw yesterday, like the task can't be completed and all that type of stuff. But if you guys think you have everything set up correctly and should be able to convert it, and you're still not able to, you want to make sure you actually do have this access turned on. Or if you're trying to remove things from work orders, since you guys switch work orders around a lot, moving it from one to another, if that ever comes into a problem, you may want to take a look at this as well. Inside work orders, there's nothing too crazy or special or unique really about this one. Assets. Each asset type is on its own individual basis. So I believe Nick said that I don't think you guys really have individual access based on department or anything. But if you guys wanted to, if you guys set up your roles for each department can only access their own specific list of assets, you could certainly come in here and you could turn off all the ones that role should not have access to. So you can go ahead and check these guys on, and then you can save, off, and then you can save. So then that role will never be able to even add a layer to see those assets. They just don't have permissions to them at all. So they'll never even see them inside of OMS. If you wanted to be able to see them but not do anything with them, obviously just leave the check mark on and then come in here and just get rid of all of the properties for it. And then they'll just be able to see it, but they won't be able to manipulate it in any way. Each one is also on its individual basis as far as saving is concerned, so I can't come in here and make a bunch of changes and then move on to BIOSWALE. You can see that it's asking me that, hey, you're about to leave without making any changes. So each time you do any changes, you actually have to save that layer itself, and then you can move on to the next one. For resources, you guys do have about 7 different types of things: equipment, labor, material, location, order, and vendor. This is kind of the same along lines of assets, nothing too crazy here, changes. The one thing you do see is you have more screen assignments for some of your resources instead. Other than that, all the properties as far as create, update, delete, and allow and deny will be the same. The admin screen. So something with the admin screen is if this isn't checked, they don't get it. Right? That means they get absolutely nothing as far as the admin's concerned. If you check it on, it doesn't mean that they have to have everything. So you can give someone access to the admin page, but if you only want them to have import-export, you can go through and uncheck every single other box, and then when they go to the screen, all they're going to have is the import-export feature. They're not going to have anything else. So even though it is an admin privilege, you can actually come in here and get rid of it. Last is we do have some global command permissions. So these are just allow and deny. These are for the role itself and only for this role. You guys, if you never want them to do any of these things throughout the whole entire process, you can alter these. Usually people just leave these all on as allow, and then they deal out each record set individually as far as what they can do, because sometimes it is different. But if it's a straight viewer type of thing, maybe you just make this deny for their global permissions for that role. So you don't have to go through and make everything independent. However, sometimes it kind of alters between the role of what they can do on certain things, so you want to make sure that this is allow and you don't deny everything. What we'll go ahead and do is I'm just going to delete this test role out of here. And we'll just go into maybe the ITS power user. Let's see which one probably has. Tollway admin may have actual people in it. So you can see the Tollway admin role has a description saying the user can create, edit, and delete assets, tasks, and work orders that Cartograph OMS. This user does have access to the administrator panel. So they kind of give a brief description of what this role can do for someone that may not have to go through the security settings to see. And then you can see in the role members, you can see every single user inside Cartograph that actually is a part of this role. So I believe Nick said that you guys all have admin access for at least the test site, which is why you're seeing probably all of your names inside this role here today. So you could come into security settings here, and we could turn off and on stuff for you. The one thing I kind of wanted to show you is the detail screen here. So this is your layout. This is another place you could potentially change a layout if you already know what you're doing, right? You already know the layout that you want, and you didn't want to go into Layout Manager for some reason to make that change, you can see that for screen assignments, Detail has Rev001. It's a custom layout for you guys for requests. You can certainly use the drop down and change it if you want. If you do pick None, that will cause problems, right? None is not a default. That means if you try to go into a detail screen of a request, it's going to blow up with a big red triangle saying you don't have access to see this because you guys set None as your layout, so you have nothing to view. And the same thing with assets. You can see Detail as air handlers. So these are all the custom layouts that you guys have. They will show up here. If you're creating a new role and you know that you want to give it the custom layouts in the first place, this is a good place so you don't have to jump around from here to Layout Manager back and forth. You can just come through and make all your custom layouts right here if they're already existing. Something else is if you already know that you have a role set up and you need to create a new one and just name it something different, right? You want the same exact security assignments that you had before, and you just want to move those forward to a new role, so that can be a new department or something along those lines. You can go to Actions and Duplicate. Name it whatever you want and say Finish and Save. And now this new role has the exact same security settings as the one we were just on. So it doesn't obviously copy any users over. It just takes the shell of the role, takes all the security settings with it, and now you don't have to reset it up from scratch. That is role administration in a